Demand freedom for Mumia. And we had a march here in San Francisco of some 20,000 people marching through the streets with the slogan, "An injury to one is an injury to all. Free Mumia Abu-Jamal." And the man that made this all possible at that time was our international president, Brian McWilliams. I want to introduce Brian. Brian, come up. Would you say a few words? Because there's much more to Brian's history than the 1999 West Coast shutdown of all ports for Mumia. He was also the speaker at a mass rally in Seattle opposing the WTO and the Liverpool dockers. He's the one that authorized me to go to Liverpool to hook up and show them solidarity when no other union was doing that. So, Brian McWilliams, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Jack. It's wonderful, wonderful to be associated with the ILWU. I can't tell you what an incredibly wonderful opportunity it's been in my life and how it's made a difference in working people's lives all over the world. I have some prepared comments. So I want to wait until the next event, what's going to happen later after 11 o'clock.
That's the live stream from the East Coast.
Do we participate in that?
No.
All right, then
we're observers in that.
All right, well
this is our action here.
All right, so this is our action. So thank you all for being here with me today. The ILWU has traditionally had a social consciousness that went far beyond our immediate workplace interests. Unashamedly at odds with the interests of established national policy, both here and in Canada. Easily observed are the arrogant U.S. government policies which interfere with democratic and just movements, both here and abroad. No different on either side of our borders. Mumia's case is clearly an example of this, and it has yet to find justice in such a slanted and biased system. While we call ourselves a civilized nation, continuing to support the death penalty and waging war around the world, the only effective way to overcome this is for working people to stand up together, to protest and resist. Today's event is an example of what has to happen to accomplish justice for Mumia. The ILWU has always stood with you in solidarity with the Free Mumia movement, and so do I. Thank you.
I was remiss in not giving you a little bit more description about Brian. Brian makes the name of our union, International Longshore and Warehouse Union. He's not just an internationalist because Canada happens to be part of our union organization. He's an internationalist because what's primary in the class struggle is internationalism in this global capitalist world. Not only is Brian an internationalist, but he's also a socialist, the last socialist president of the ILWU at the international level. Our next speaker is the new blood into ILWU, Local 10, which is sorely needed in all of our locals. Our next speaker has deep roots in the struggle against racism in this country. David Newton, his nickname, we all have tags on the waterfront. Newt is what we call him, and that's because his uncle is Huey P. Newton. So with that short introduction, brothers and sisters, comrades, Newt.
Please forgive me, I'll stay away from the microphone the best I can.
We can hear you.
Well, I've been under the weather a little bit. I actually just came back from Ghana celebrating my aunt Elaine Brown's birthday, who turned 80 years old, who was the only woman that had a civil rights organization in U.S. history. Tested negative for COVID, so everybody who's scared of that, please know that. Tested positive for type A flu, but I'm okay now. I think it's maybe the 9th inning of that. With all that being said, power to the people. I'd like to thank President, I won't say X because the President always is President, Mr. McWilliams that just spoke, and everyone for being here. Big shout out to, as I say that, I see a member of the drill team, 2 of them on my left. And we had an action here February 16th, if nobody knew that, and that drill team marched and stomped like I've never seen. The drill team is very much a part of this union, and Jack Heyman, and Steve Zeltzer. There's so many names, but these people are instrumental. Comrade Jared, I mean, the list goes on and on. My sisters out here. We stood down for Mumia, and this is about the trip going to South Africa in relation to this, what we're doing today. Myself, Jack Heyman, and 12 other delegates of the ILWU traveled to South Africa. And part of that trip was to ignite the relationship that had been pre-existing between the dock workers of South Africa and the dock workers of local 10 longshoremen. When Nelson Mandela represented the ANC and was released, he came on a national tour, or international tour, excuse me, and he came to Oakland. And in that speech, he directly thanked the Longshoremen Union for being on the front lines of helping him be released and reconstruct the South African delegation. Brother Clarence Thomas was on that trip also. Shout out to him. During that trip, we also met with the heads of NUMSA, which is the National Union of Metal Workers South Africa. NUMSA is the largest union in the whole continent of Africa, 360,000 members, I believe, roughly. With that meeting, Angela Davis sent a personal note and letter that we hand-delivered to the president there, saying that myself and Jack Heyman would be in town, and if they could please take the time to meet with us, because we demand the freeing of Mumia Abu-Jamal, comrade, who has been locked up for 42 years unjustly, an innocent man, a political prisoner, amongst many other things. Journalist, union man, and we hear a lot about innocent people and the working class stand up for one another. As I previously stated, I just got back from Ghana, and we went through the slave dungeons. And part of the separation of the slave dungeons was you had different tribes where in our world, we call it unification. They weren't unified, and by the time they looked up, it's too late. They'd gone to what they call as a point of no return as a slave ship. So now we have the knowledge to be unified, and we are unions. And what this relationship does between us and South Africa is it grows that unification. So now we aren't in the dark with each other. We can talk amongst each other. We can represent each other. We can do a lot of things in solidarity, like we truly say, but do we really mean it? We need to mean what we say and do what we mean. So with all of that said, the South African brothers and sisters and comrades, they stood down for Mumia. They gave a national interview with the media, and they had a stop work action for a United States citizen. This brother is the lineage of Africa, but he's not a citizen of Africa, legally. They stood down for this brother. The least we can do as a nation is accept this brother and say we need to stand down for his freedom and anyone else like him. We say fight for the working class, and I say that proudly, but I say that tentatively because I feel we need to fight for anyone that is under that kind of pressure. And that's a working class or somebody that wants to be a working class. So I won't take any more time. Power to the people, and thank you.
Thank you, New. Our next speaker is the only other retiree who went to South Africa on the delegation, a delegation of 14 members and retirees. Clarence Thomas, let me just say a few words about Clarence. This local has a long history of having Black Panther Party members in our membership. David Hilliard, Clarence Thomas, number amongst a few of them, but there were others as well. And that helped fortify the militancy in this local over the years. Clarence has spoken eloquently on the case of Oscar Grant, who was killed by the BART police. He, in the middle of the Iraq War, when we were expressing solidarity and calling for an end to the Iraq War, Clarence went over there to speak to the trade unionists and let them know we stand with them. I wish we had that kind of international solidarity now at the international level and at the local level as well. But that is diminishing, and we need to turn that around. I think with the leadership of people like David Newton, it is going to be turned around. We'll be headed in the right direction again. So with all that said, the reason ILWU is where it's at today, still able to project a militant image, Clarence Thomas.
Friends and comrades, I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you today, but I am, through the magic of technology, in the hands of the working class.
Yeah. Yes.
Let me, first of all, quote from a former political prisoner, a prison abolitionist, a revolutionary, a scholar, Sister Angela Davis. And this is the quote. When the ILWU takes a stand, the world feels its reverberations. Unquote. The most recent example of such an action is the international labor support for Mumia Abu-Jamal, which emanated from ILWU Local 10's delegation to South Africa this past January. I was grateful, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to join the delegation of ILWU Local 10 in this historic visit to South Africa. And one of the reasons why Local 10 was invited to South Africa was to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Black South African workers breaking the chains of cheap labor with its rolling strikes, a movement which struck at the base of apartheid system, racial capitalism. I was very, very grateful to be able to make that trip. This invitation, which was extended to Local 10, represented an acknowledgement of the contribution that the local has contributed to the anti-apartheid struggle, whether it was observing boycott of South African cargo picket lines, establishing the Southern African Liberation Support Committee, or refusing to unload South African cargo for 11 days. These actions on the part of the ILWU Local 10 represents the continuing legacy of the importance of international labor solidarity for the working class. And it was for that reason that Local 10 instructed the delegation to build international labor solidarity for Mumia by meeting with the officers of NUMSA and also RATUSA, Revolutionary Transport Workers of South Africa. Let me just say this. One of the most important aspects of that visit was for young members of the delegation to understand the importance of building international solidarity. Yes, unions have an obligation to its members to negotiate great contracts, to establish great working conditions, pay, and benefits. There is no question about that. But the responsibility and duties of unions go beyond that. We have to represent the entire working class be they organized or unorganized. This trip represents the DNA of the ILWU. The founders of this union understood the importance of rank and file members being able to travel and meet other workers to find out what their struggles are so that we would be able to communicate. Can you imagine if the entire AFL-CIO were to have followed the example of ILWU Local 10? Shutting down ports as we did on February 16th. All Bay Area ports were shut down. Being able to get the largest labor organization in South Africa to be able to make a compelling, radical, important letter to Judge Lucretia Clemens on behalf of Mumia. To be able to rally his rank and file to have a wonderful demonstration at the embassy in Pretoria a few days ago. We need to understand the obligation that trade unionists have to stand up and support radical and revolutionary leaders who have been framed by the system. We have an obligation to fight for them. Mumia is an innocent man. We know about frame-ups. We learned about that from supporting our own Harry Bridges, Tom Mooney.
That's right.
We understand the importance of being able to speak truth to power. And not only that, but to act. I want to read something to you that came directly from Mumia Abu-Jamal. It was received on October 5th, 2021. I quote, "Dear Brother Trent," that's Trent Willis, president at the time, "I want to thank you for your stalwart and massive work in 1999 to thwart the state's attempt to destroy me. Your work since then to give voice to the damned has been nothing short of noble and just. I thank you." I'll finish this up.
Just want to recognize Larry Wright, who was one of the organizers. And we organized that action right here in the Henry Schmidt room. Larry, thank you. Thanks for coming, Larry. And so the first clip I want to show you, are you ready, Nate? Yeah. Go, let's go. Is Nelson Mandela recognizing the action that was organized right here in Local 10.
We salute members of the International Longshoremen and Warehousemen Union Local 10. Who refused to unload a South African cargo ship in 1984. In response to this demonstration, other workers, church people, community activists, and educators gathered each day at the docks to express their solidarity with the dock workers.
That's good.
They established themselves as the front line of the anti-apartheid movement in the Bay Area.
That's it. Sorry, Nelson, we have to move on, but that was the essence of what he had to say. Clarence well documented our history of fighting against apartheid and defending victims of capitalist repression in this country. And one of the first ones was Harry Bridges, who they tried to go after because they said he was a Red and they wanted to deport him back to Australia. But in this very hall, more recently, in 1972, the president of the local at that time, Cleophas Williams, introduced a resolution at the convention to take action to defend Angela Davis. And one of the very first rallies was held in this hall. It was called Free Angela. So we have a long history of defending political prisoners in this local. often in defiance of the international leadership, because that action in '84 wasn't only opposed to Ronald Reagan, who was president at the time, and it was not just the mayor, Dianne Feinstein, but the Democratic Party as a whole. They said this was illegal. Here's the point, is our local was in defiance of all these other forces, yet we followed through on what we felt was a very important principled action. And that was the action to oppose apartheid. Right now, I want to show you that relationship that we made with the South African working class continues to this day. NUMSA has been coming here on May Days for the last few years. And we want to continue that relationship. So when we went to South Africa, they already knew who we were. The most militant trade union in the United States of America. And when we asked them to come out in a very serious and militant way in defense of Mumia, they did. They just had yesterday a demonstration at the Capitol, Pretoria. General Secretary Irvin Jim did a video immediately after we had the meeting with them. That was Newt, the new leadership, coming up of Local 10, and myself. Then he wrote a letter on his own to Judge Clemson, Mumia's judge. So I just want to show you what we did in 1999 with the backing and organization of Brian McWilliams, who was international president at the time.
Dock workers say Saturday's a big overtime day to move tons of goods that come through ports. And they say nothing was moved on the day shift today. Instead, longshore workers, labor leaders, and social activists made a 2-hour march through San Francisco to protest and try to stop the execution of Mumia Abu-Jamal, convicted of killing a Philadelphia police officer 18 years ago.
I think people are recognizing that what we're experiencing really is a crisis in democracy. It's not only about Mumia Abu-Jamal, it's about a prison system that is larger and larger, and that focuses on punishment for profit.
Dock workers say today's the day to come here instead of going to work. Let's stop work rallies affect all 22 ports along the West Coast.
Chicago, Native America, we got to do.
Another rally in Philadelphia drew more than 3,000 people, some from as far away as France.
What we want to tell the workers in Pennsylvania is that what the Longshore Union is doing out here in California, they can do in Pennsylvania and save the life of Mumia Abu-Jamal.
That's it. Say what happened 24 years ago. It happened 24 years ago, shutting down all the West Coast ports to defend Mumia Abu-Jamal, and marching here in San Francisco with some 20,000 people. That link continued with South African workers to this day. So when Newt and I went over there, they already knew about ILWU Local 10. I want to show you what they did when we went to meet with them. The Mumia action, which happened in 1999, was preceded by the Oakland teachers. They had a teach-in on the racist death penalty and on the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And that opened the door for this union, ILWU Local 10, to take its action. So I want to thank Bob Mandel, who was a force in the teachers union then and today, getting support from Mumia. Bob Mandel. This anti-apartheid strike that happened in '84, our international leadership at the time, Jimmy Herman, was actually opposed to it. He said it's illegal, we're breaking the union contract, and he sided with the employers, PMA, against the local in an arbitration. And we said, this is too important an issue. What's happening to our brothers and sisters in South Africa, we have to break the laws in order to change the laws. And so that we still are today. We are renegades. then I was going to point to the mural on the sidewalk out here, and I hope people afterwards take the opportunity to look at the mural. It's a painting of the two martyrs from the 1934 strike. And it says, 2 strikers shot in the back, police murder. Now, nowadays, some people like to say, some of the union officials, that 2 workers died. No, it wasn't died, they were murdered. This is exactly what's happening today with police murdering black and brown people across the country, and even white people as well. Let me include that. But predominantly people of color. And we gotta put a stop to that. And ILWU has shown the way. It's up to the rest of the working class to join in with these actions, because we can stop the death machine. That 1999 action, Mumia was on death row then. They were gonna execute Mumia. We did not free Mumia, but we stopped the execution because 2 years later, he was off death row, legally. So, the other point about that mural out there is the killing of those 2 strikers led to a general strike in this city. Everything was shut down. And what we learned from that experience was that the police are not part of the working class. They're the Praetorian Guard for the capitalist class. We see it in the ghettos, the black neighborhoods. We see it used against immigrant workers. We see it being used against striking workers. They play the same role today. And that's why I'm proud to say this local maybe is the only union in the United States that bans police from membership. They're not part of the working class. They're strike breakers. They're murderers. I appreciate everyone coming and listening to what we have to say. This trip to South Africa was historic, and I think we will see in the years, hopefully in the days coming up, that Judge Clemens will listen to what the working class and its allies have to say about her finally making a just decision to release Mumia Abu-Jamal once and for all. Free Mumia! Free Mumia! Bob Mandel never loses an opportunity to speak.
In the ILWU for 7 years, proudly. But I want to make one point, and it's on the banner that's obscured by it says D.A. Krasner dropped the charges. That sign right there says Democratic Party General Chairman Rendell framed Mumia. He planned the MOVE bombing. We need to remember throughout this battle and in our national struggles and international struggles, the Democratic Party is not a party of the working class, plain and simple. And whether it's, we've just watched the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade. But something to keep in mind is that Democratic support, even there, has been equivocal. Dwight Eisenhower, a racist, a man who made public racist statements, sent troops to Little Rock to integrate the schools. Bill Clinton never sent troops to defend abortion clinics. Joe Biden just broke the railroad workers' strike, and now we watch crash after potential catastrophic clash. So that's the point I simply want to make, that we've known it from the beginning with Mumia because of Rendell's role. Krasner, the progressive Democrat, lines himself up with Judge Sabo, who I think everyone in this room knows said, fry the N, right? Fry the N. That's the judge. That's what Krasner is continuing to do.
That's right. Thank you, Bob. We're waiting for the live stream to start, and as soon as it comes on, that's it. Who's ever on the mic has to stop.
Can't stop Steve.
Thanks, brothers and sisters. And I have to say, it was an historic meeting in South Africa, in Durban, in South Africa. It's the first time that rank and file longshore workers met with the dockers of Durban in South Africa. And that meeting and coming together is what we have to build for workers all over the world. Our brothers and sisters in Mexico, in other countries, in Taiwan, in Japan, we need to have direct links internationally. That's one of the things that unions should be doing in this country. My union, the CWA, communication workers, journalists, they're journalists in Turkey and other countries who are being massacred, in Mexico. We need to link up with these workers globally because we're fighting the same system. We're fighting really capitalism and dictatorship. That's what we're fighting. So this conference at the Bats Arts Center was at a military facility, but actually had been turned into a workers' cultural arts center. And there are plans, I think, this coming January to have another conference, International Labor Conference. And I hope some other longshore and other unionists can go to that because we have to develop these links and solidarity actions. So one of the things that the conference passed, the RTSU, the Revolutionary Transport Workers Union, is a joint statement of where we want to go internationally. And the statement is on the table over there, calls for an international campaign against war, because this war is killing workers. This war is about profiteering of the military-industrial complex. It's not benefiting workers in this country. And next weekend, March the 18th, there's going to be a rally against the war around the country and in San Francisco at 24th and Mission. And we're trying to get a workers contingent because this statement came out and said that we need a workers' party in this country. We need a political alternative to the Democrats and Republicans. Because next year, how can we have a situation next year when the only debate is between the Democrats and Republicans? That is a real political problem. So we're trying to have a united labor contingent for a labor party at the rally. The other action that was passed at the conference in Durban of the unions is that there's a struggle of the Namibian miners. In Namibia, the miners of a Rossing branch were fired 3 years ago when a company, the Chinese National Nuclear Corporation, took over that mine, and then they tried to get the workers to make concessions. When they refused to do it, the leadership of the union, they fired 9 branch executive members of the Mine Workers Union of Namibia in that branch. They've been without jobs, and they're terrorizing the workers there because they don't have a union, really, that's standing up for them. So on the 28th, there is going to be a rally at the Chinese consulate in San Francisco demanding that they rehire these miners. It's a state-owned company, Chinese National Nuclear Corporation. So we have to say workers have solidarity wherever they are in every country of the world. We have to build solidarity with the working class, and we invite you to participate in that action of international solidarity. An injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
And finding out when I went there, they take a port and they privatize it for like 25 years at a time. And then they pick who they want to work at the port. And then they have a union set up, but they're not even picking the union workers. They're just picking workers that's not like scab workers. So it was a lot to learn. I mean, they're going through a lot, and the apartheid just ended. So you got to realize there's a lot going on with their struggle still. There's a lot that needs to still come into play. And you don't want them to necessarily like mimic what we got going on, but have what they want to have going on for their community and for their people. Because everything we got going on here, we fighting for change too. So they don't necessarily want to mimic all of our democratic so-called ways. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot as far as what there was this brother that spoke to me, and he said he was a linesman. And as a linesman, he goes and ties up the ships and stuff like that. That's what he does as a longshoreman. And we were at this conference, and it was at the University of Durban, technology school. And he said there was all these people speaking up there. They were intellectuals. And these intellectuals speaking about what was going on with that strike at that time that happened 50 years ago. But the people, the man that was sitting in the audience, he was a part of the strike, and they didn't even give him an opportunity to be a part of that intellectual conversation. And that didn't make any sense. There was a lot going on down there that we as American citizens should be grateful that when we have a voice, we practice and we use our voice. And they were limiting people. And when they limited people like that, it make you realize that you have to keep fighting. The struggle is real. The struggle will not end. It won't end here, there, or nowhere. Because every time you try to sit down and lay back and relax, it's something else to stand up for. So stand up, fight back.
Thank you, Gennaro. So, it's starting now? Okay. Here we go, live stream from Philadelphia. Bearing witness for Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Only believe in one ism, and that's humanism. A lot of different people believe in capitalism, socialism, or whatever. As you can see, I am African American, and Leo Robinson was my mentor. I am also a part of the African American Longshore Coalition. Its mission is to end racism within our union and without. When this invitation came to us, actually Gennaro brought the conference a couple months before, but when Steve brought a handheld letter inviting us to come to South Africa to celebrate the end of apartheid, and what we did, the longshore, black longshoremen in '84, it struck me. And I asked, how many of us do you need? He said, as many as possible. So I made a motion for 5 to 10 retirees and active longshoremen, and it was voted up unanimously. And the thing about it is this: their struggle is our struggle. Tomorrow I'll be 58 years old. Thank you. 59 years ago, the United States ended segregation. 29 years ago, apartheid was ended. We 30 years ahead of them, blacks in this country. But Mumia is in jail because of the 13th Amendment. It has an exception, because just like South Africans treat the native Africans, just like this country treats African Americans born here, we are under slave laws. We get penalized by doing a crime or allegedly doing a crime as a slave. Just like the Africans in South Africa, the Afrikaners, they penalize the natives. We come from a militant union, but one of the reasons I made this motion is because we have a new group of longshoremen. Nuke is one of them. Gennaro is one of them. As many in this room that's helping out are new. We need a spark. And I believe this motion helped spark something in our union. I'm getting kind of emotional because this is happening. We made international solidarity not only in South Africa, but also in Japan. But right now, we are facing a contract, and we are negotiating a new contract. And for the first time, locally, since 96, we haven't won any local negotiations in this port. And we making movement this year. Our international president, Willie Adams, the first African-American international president in this union. He made a statement to our employers that somehow you seem racist because Local 10 is the only one you don't sit down to negotiate with. But this year we make a movement because international solidarity is real. I thank everybody for showing up. I believe we just not need to talk to the judge because the judge needs to do her job. She can only rule on the laws of this land. And the 13th Amendment says if you black, you must convict blacks under slave laws. But the one who holds the power is the DA. I believe we need to write the DA and remind him your white privileges are revoked. And we need to continue to take labor actions until he understands that. Because laws don't change people. People's behavior change laws. Thank you.